inside Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral. It is the seat of the Archdiocese of Montreal for the Roman Catholic Church, and it is the service that will be presided over by the Archbishop of Montreal, Christian Lepine. You're seeing the guests begin to arrive. There is Michel Lacroix just at the top of the screen. And I think we might be seeing a role for him at some point. That would be my guess at some point in this service. So we'll certainly be watching for that. We're going to be following the procession as it leaves from the Bell Center in just about 30 minutes' time. The Bell Center just a few short blocks away. We know there will be a funeral procession, the casket, a motorcade of 3 limousines to be escorted by Montreal police on horseback and on motorcycle, making their way here to the cathedral. And again, the special invited guests, including Larry Robinson, are already beginning to arrive. Tell me a little bit about their relationship, Pat.
Well, Robinson was probably the best defenseman. They had 3 great defensemen. They had Serge Savard, Robinson, and Guy Lafleur. And Robinson was one of those guys that he grew up in Winchester, Ontario, but he could speak French. He could converse in it. And I think he took Guy under his wing when he first arrived here and helped him make the adjustment. I think that one of the things, there was a lot of expectations on Guy when he arrived. He had good first season, he had 29 goals, but he wasn't the Rookie of the Year. He wasn't what everybody expected from the #1 overall draft pick, a player that they had made a lot of manipulations so that they could, ensure they could draft him. And I think that he might have felt a little bit of pressure, and Larry helped ease out, just said, look, it's going to come. And the Canadians in those days had a habit of bringing along players very slowly. Yvon Conway also helped them in that regard, because when Yvon Conway started playing, they only used him on the power play. One year he scored 29 goals. He scored 28 of them on the power play.
So Yvon Conway, that's it. We will watch for him. He was going to be on our broadcast, but because the players have to be in certain places at certain times, unable to. But hopefully he'll join us later, and we'll certainly be watching for him. But Yvon Conway, he had 4 40-goal seasons. He was the star before Lafleur joined the team. So they already had Conway in place. And in those first years when Guy Lafleur was not really the superstar that we knew him, it was Yvon Conway, as I understand it, who had a bit of a key role in that, because was it not he who advised him to get rid of the helmet?
Yes, he did.
He with Henri Houchard?
And Don Cherry would say afterwards, he became an entirely different player when he got rid of the helmet.
What do you think that was? So it was optional in that day. So get rid of the helmet, and he does in 1974. And what was that freeing about that for him?
I think he probably felt that, I think it was freeing. And I think that it helped create his image. And I think that he felt comfortable with the hair flowing back there. And, it's strange because later in life he had problems losing hair and, went through a bunch of treatments for
his cancer,
but it's I think it just created his image, the Demon Blonde.
That's right, with the flowing locks. Nobody had. So he had the cool, he had the Hollywood looks, and he had this incredible skill. Tell me, one thing I haven't asked you yet. Let's just take a quick look together inside, and we can see again. We see Larry Robinson. Anybody there that you'd like to point out for us, Pat?
I'm having trouble seeing it.
Again, Michel Lacroix, there he is there.
Yeah.
In the Bell Center, the announcer, and certainly somebody who tried nobly to lead a beautiful tribute to him on the Sunday after his death, but interrupted by the adoring fans. When I say you're covering the Gazette for more than 50 years, so you would have seen the very earliest Guy Lafleur. What do you remember when you first saw him on the ice?
When I first saw him, he was playing for the Quebec Rempart.
Okay, the junior.
He was just one of those dynamic players. He scored 130 goals, and he was just so. It was exciting. I mean, they said about he took people out of their seats. And that's exactly what he did. When he was in full flight, people would stand up, and they would expect him. When he scored a goal, it was just there was just excitement every time he played.
So that's interesting because, you've written a book, If These Walls Could Talk, on the Canadiens. You've written on the Canadiens for many years, and you said he might not be the best player you saw, but he was the most exciting. Does that speak to what you're talking about? How he would electrify the crowd?
That's right. He was, he was just a fantastic player and exciting every time. You'd see goals. For example, Phil Esposito scored 50 goals several seasons in a row, but he was pretty boring. He just sat in front of the net and
cherry picker
and fed on Bobby Orr's rebounds. It's other players. Lafleur was John Beliveau, Frank Mahowitz. These were big guys who just were very workmanlike and things like that, but they weren't as creative as Guy was. I think one of his teammates once said, Steve Shutt once said that, I don't know what he's going to do because he doesn't know what he's going to do.
Yes.
He just comes down. You couldn't really feed off him because you didn't know what he was going to do.
That's what Marc Durand was just telling me. He said, he complained to Lafleur about that. He said, that's your job. Figure it out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Figure out what I'm going to do, and he did. So when we talk about goals, one thing we haven't mentioned yet, as we watch the guests arrive and we see the pews fill, the thousands who will pay tribute, we haven't talked about the too many men. And I think we have to do that. 1979, the anniversary is coming up, May 10th, 1979.
Yes.
So here we are on the 3rd. 1979, Game 7, semifinals, Montreal against arch-rival Boston. Remind people of that, Pat.
Well, the Canadiens are trailing 4-3. It looks like they're in trouble. It's less than 3 minutes to go, and they call for a stick measurement. And they say, this is, we think this stick is too big, and it turns out it is too big. So that's a penalty for the Bruins. And then Guy Lafleur comes down. You can see him winding up, starting to rush out of his own end. He passes ahead to Jacques Lemaire. Jacques Lemaire
that was the centerman at the time.
Deeper, yes, and then he passes back to Lafleur, and Lafleur beats Gilles Gilbert with a one-timer.
74 seconds left in the game.
The game is tied up. Yvon Lambert scores in 10 minutes into overtime, and the Canadiens escaped.
And moved on to the finals and won the Stanley Cup again.
They won the Stanley Cup in 4
that
games
year.
in the final.
But one of the things so interesting about that, because Yvon Lambert, when I was in the Bell Center yesterday looking at the tributes, and there's a beautiful bouquet that Yvon Lambert and his family have sent to the Lafleur family, and I was reading the message, but he talked about how Guy Lafleur enabled him to be a star for 24 hours, and then they moved on, of course. But he really, and he will be here today. I would imagine he was at his 70th birthday back in September. Yvon Lambert, one of the Canadiens greats that we would expect to see today. And again, as people begin to arrive, just to set the scene for you here, this is Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral. This is where the national funeral for Jean Béliveau was held in 2014. It was a very cold, very miserable December day. Remember that, indeed. Pat? It was. And today, thankfully, for those who are arriving, the former players, the fans, it is 15 degrees. There is a mix of sun and cloud, and hopefully that will bring out so many of Lafleur's fans. And there is a look inside this church. It is just so beautiful. If you were not listening earlier, I was explaining that it is a replica, it is a scale replica of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So the very seat of the Roman Catholic Church. They built this in Montreal, started construction in 1870 and finished it and opened it in 1894. And Pat, as I mentioned, what is really extraordinary is Jean Charest arrives there and greets the mourners. The Canadiens were founded in 1909. Only this church looks like it's been here forever, but the Canadiens in 1909, just 15 years after this church, it looks like it's been here forever. So if people wonder why hockey is a religion here,
it is a religion, and it's one of those. It's one of those things you really can't explain, but it just becomes so much an important part of the fabric of this city. The Canadiens, it's strange because it was founded by a bunch of Englishmen, an American in one case, and a local businessman. But it's become so much a part of the identity of Quebec. And I remember last season before this, at one point there was one game where, for the first time in the Canadiens' history, they didn't have a French Canadian in the lineup. and that was considered sacrilege.
Two on the roster, but they weren't suited up, were they, for various reasons? Yes.
And just and they've made an effort this past season to get a few more French Canadians. And I think that one of the things going forward is that they broke a little bit by tradition by bringing in a general manager who's not a francophone, but he speaks French perfectly. He is a native Montrealer, and I think that one of the things that made him acceptable to everybody was the fact that he did speak in French. His French was very good, and he recognizes the role that the Canadians play in Quebec society.
Just want to pause on something we just saw. We saw some members of the Canadian Armed Forces arrive, and we are expecting 6 members of the Royal Canadian Air Force to be in attendance, including the man who was the former commander of CFB Bagotville in the Saguenay region of Quebec. And for 2 terms, Guy Lafleur was the honorary colonel there, 12 Wing and then 3rd Wing, which is the flight combat wing, so the CF-18 Hornet. And we do expect, Pat, if the weather holds, and I hope it holds, a fly past just after noon, a military salute to his time as honorary colonel there. Interesting, 4 different visits to Afghanistan to play ball hockey. Can you imagine the Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan playing ball hockey with Guy Lafleur? Except that he wasn't very good at ball hockey, apparently, and he didn't like golf.
No, that's funny because most hockey players do like golf. He played it. I mean, he was always at the Canadians golf tournament. He wasn't a bad golfer, but he just didn't enjoy it. I think that I can understand his feeling. I mean, it's 4 or 5 hours that you could probably be doing something. A
good walk ruined, maybe something like that. I think we're seeing Pierre Mondoux, one of the teammates there.
Yes.
And this is the statue to Guy Lafleur, one of the 4 greats outside the Bell Centre. So it's Howie Moran's there on the far left, and then Maurice Richard, Jean Beliveau, and the statue done, all of them, by Marc-André Fortier, who is a sculptor from Knowlton, Quebec, in the Eastern Townships. Our first look at some of these scenes at the Bell Centre. And there you see the fans. And this is going to be something I would expect we'll hear Guy, Guy, Guy.
I think you probably will. I think when the funeral procession arrives here, certainly that will be, that will probably be part of the tribute to him.
So tell me about that. I arrived here just as the Forum was closing when I lived here, and the start of the Bell Centre. That's the home of the team now. I never saw Lafleur play in the Forum, but you would have. And everyone talks about crowd on feet, Guy, Guy, Guy. What did it feel like? What was the magic when he was in full flight?
It was just electric. I mean, if you started seeing him coming out of his own end, you knew that something was going to happen. And he would get into speed. He didn't always score, obviously, and he didn't always set up a goal, but there was always the expectation that there was going to be something special happening. And more often than not, he delivered. He was the first player to score 50 goals in 6 consecutive seasons, first player to score 100 points in 6 consecutive seasons. And
Steve Shutt, and one of those was a 60-goal season, wasn't it? Steve Shutt got 60 goals in 76, and he got it in 77. So they were, his line, when you think about that line, Shutt, Mahovlich, or Shutt, Lemaire, and then Guy Lafleur, one of the dominant lines in hockey for all time.
Probably one of the greatest. It's certainly in the conversation, but it's the greatest line in hockey, because you had with guys that could score 50 goals. You had, and they were also guys, Jacques Lemaire, who later made his mark as a coach by preaching defense, was always there to make sure that the line was responsible, that when they didn't have the puck, they wouldn't be scored on.
Just pause for one moment. There's Jeff Molson coming into the church, the owner of the team presently. He has spoken very movingly about the loss of Guy Lafleur, and I would expect we'll be hearing from him as part of the service. Their relationship, obviously, that continued right up until his death, and there were lots of reports about here, even in the final weeks of his life. He would have conversations with Jeff Molson. He'd be asking about today's team. Still interest in the Canadians. Watching the Wild game on the Tuesday before his death, he was still very much involved in the life of the team and interested in it.
Yeah, I think there was a period, obviously, when he was basically forced into retirement. and he wasn't very happy. And then he went to the Rangers for a season. He went to the Quebec Nordiques, who were the bitter enemies, the bitter rivals of the Canadiens at the time. And then there was a period where he was sort of outside the family. They brought him back in. He worked as an ambassador. It was sometimes proved embarrassing for the team because he had no filter. If you asked him a question, he would answer it honestly, and sometimes with not the result the Canadians would expect from they said, well, we're paying this guy. Why is he saying this? And but he was incredibly honest. And
the problem with the team is we have four fourth lines.
That's right. It's,
he didn't hold back.
He didn't hold back on it, and I would see him every year. They gave out Guy Lafleur awards, and these were for hockey players who excelled in the classroom. And Guy, very self-deprecating, would always, we would talk about it, and he would say that, this is rather strange because he left school fairly early. I think he stopped going to school when he was in the second year of high school and just concentrated on hockey. And he wasn't, unlike Jean Beliveau, who had a similar background, but was incredibly well-read. And a very eclectic, taste running to history, serious fiction, books on religion. And I don't think he ever cracked the book. But he was smart. He was intelligent in his own way.
Yes.
He was curious about things.
Maybe that's part of the connection because he was sort of the ordinary superstar. And I think Quebec fans saw in him someone who didn't put on airs.
That's right.
Someone who could talk to them about whatever ordinary life from a small town in the province.
I mean, he understood the people. He understood the fans.
Yes.
And, I think he might have been a little sad that over the years it's become so expensive to go to NHL games. And that you don't have, it's expensive for someone to take a family of four unless you're making a fair bit of money. And but I think that he was, he always enjoyed, talking to these young players who were excelled in the classroom. He took up flying helicopters. That was one of his great loves.
And interestingly, that's part of the connection to, again, CFB Bagotville, but in the Bell Center, Stanley Cup, all of the individual awards that he won, and then there was a helicopter model in tribute to his love of aviation. He had a business interest in that, and he would fly all around, wouldn't he, in a helicopter?
Yeah, he would ferry helicopters, and one of the, I was talking to one of his former teammates, and he said one of the things that Guy was a very private person, and that the idea of going up and flying to Calgary, it might take several days in a helicopter, but he was all alone and up in the air and just enjoying himself.
We're awaiting the Premier of the province of Quebec, François Legault, and his wife, former premiers obviously in attendance as well, paying tribute to him. When you mention the helicopter and the business interest later, something that people might not know, all of the different commercial interests, there was a cologne, was there not?
Yes, there was, number 10.
Number 10
cologne.
Number
10.
There's a gin, the various spirits.
Yeah.
He had a restaurant, he had business interests. If people are really interested, maybe they want to go back to 1979. We're looking at Serge Savard, one of his captains, one of his four captains as he arrives there, a great defenseman, Hall of Famer as well. We will see him in this service set to arrive. But 1979, he had a disco album too, Pat. Do you have a copy of Lafleur?
No, I don't. But I know they did do a disco album, and which was fitting because he spent some time in discos and
on Crescent Street.
Yes.
On Crescent Street.
He was a regular Thursdays and
one of the great bars on Crescent Street. I listened to the part of it, not all of it, but it was really interesting. It was a disco beat, and Guy Lafleur sort of talking, wasn't singing, but talking with a funky disco beat,
Right.
and giving his own pointers, you know, ankle support and growing up on the rink in Thurso. It was really interesting. It was a big seller.
Yeah.
They're doing a movie of his life too. We can expect that in 2024. I know Luc Picard is writing the script for that, and that will be quite a story, because he is someone who was Hollywood in terms of his looks and his cool. And there we're seeing the procession as it arrives behind us, Pat. And let's look together. Let's keep our camera, if we can, there, right on that shot. And I will tell you, as Pat and I turn around to see this better, the 3 limousines, well, no, far more than 3 limousines. But from here, we expect to see the family emerge, Pat. And we will talk about that. We are going to see the Prime Minister arriving. There is Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, his wife, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. We'll pause if we can, if he talks to reporters. We do understand he's going to make a statement. His attendance confirmed just last night. So we'll just watch these pictures as he greets and maybe comes to a microphone. Let's listen in live.
Outside of Quebec, in your opinion? Well, first, today is a time for us all to say thank you. Thank you for these emotions that he helped us experience as a player, as an inspiration, all of the goals that he gave us. But also it's a time to thank him for his profound humanity, the way that he was at the service of us all, as a Quebecer and as a Canadian. I'm so touched by his life, and today is a day to think about everything that he's given us and everything that he continues to inspire us. He was a very sensitive and warm man. I met him quickly in my teenage years. He was dedicated to helping young people and very dedicated as well as a father, as a public personality when it came to mental health, which is so important. So we celebrate his courage and his sensibility.
To say thank you to Guy Lafleur for everything he gave us over so many years. All the wins, all the inspiration, the incredible games he played, but also his deep humanity. His contributions to the world around him was legendary and an inspiration to us all. Today's the day to reflect and celebrate on everything he gave us. Merci.
The Prime Minister and his wife, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, stopping to speak to reporters and to deliver a statement, again, acknowledging not just the man, the hockey man, and the many records, the 5 Stanley Cups, but also the humanity, the generosity, the authenticity, all of the character traits that Pat Hickey and I have been speaking about, the many traits that really settled this close connection that fans feel to this day. Think about him 14 years ago, or not 14 years ago, 8 years ago in 2014 for the funeral of Jean Béliveau. And these are the kinds of things, Pat, that really harken back to 2000 and the funeral for his own father. I mean, really, Montreal as a city has seen these incredible funerals for larger-than-life figures in various aspects of public life, including his father, also in the year 2000, same year as Maurice Richard.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think that, these are larger than life figures. And I think they're people that people identify with them. They're part of people's lives, part of the fabric of the society. And, that's always been a big part of it, and they've been accessible over the years. I think that, I can't think of any player on the Canadiens right now that would engender the same sort of respect and feeling among the people.
I'm struck by, there is Pierre Trudeau. We've seen former premiers. We're going to see François Legault. I'm seeing as well in the crowd, not in these particular shots, but Pauline Marois, the former leader of the Parti Québécois. The title of Marc Durand's documentary was The Unifier. And yes, he meant something very special to French Canadians, but he meant a lot to many people.
I think the fact that he was basically apolitical, he was not a political figure. Remember Guy Carbonneau a few years ago, put his stock with the Liberal Party, and that created a lot of friction among the government and some other people. And so I think that the fact that he was, apolitical and was something for all Quebecers. Everybody could identify with him. And
now, what time do you have to be in the
I
church?
have to go very soon.
Do you have to go very soon?
Go.
I don't want you to miss this.
Yeah.
So could you give a closing thought? And you're welcome to come back and join me after the service, if you wouldn't mind sharing your thought. Give a closing thought, though, to lead us in what we're going to see and why, or a closing thought as you have watched the life and career.
I think we're going to see a very emotional service. I think that it's going to be, it's a fitting send-off. I think that it's not, the people who are in the church are important people. But I think that one of the things that's going to be more interesting is the people out here lined up on the street who will be watching this on a big screen, all the people who will be watching it on television today. And I think it's going to be, this is something that's going to touch all Quebecers and hopefully people right across the country.
I hope so, as we broadcast to them. Pat, I'll let you go because I can talk for a moment. Douglas Gallagher is going to take your place. I thank you so much for sharing all of this.
My pleasure.
I was just watching there as Doug gets set to join me. What we're seeing are the players, the former players, getting off the bus.
There's Marty St. Louis, the coach there.
And we just saw Guy Carbonneau get off the bus as well, Carbo, one of the captains. So we'll watch this. Our Sarah Levitt is part of our CBC News team. She's been outside the Bell Center for us. And Sarah, let's go back to you for just a moment for what you're seeing there.
Well, in fact, right now I've made my way up to the cathedral, right outside the cathedral, because there is quite a large crowd here gathered, fans ready to watch as people arrive in the church. And in fact, we spoke earlier about that 100 fans that are being let into to the funeral. Well, I did see a few people from the crowd be brought in, and quite excited that they were able to pay their respects inside. But lots of people telling me many different stories, but they all amount to pretty much the same thing, that Guy Lafleur, whether you met him or not, had a huge impact on their lives. And one reoccurring theme, as we just heard from the guest there, was that, yes, he was a hockey player, yes, he was a legend, but he was a humble man, and he would be in a park or just walking down the street, and he'd be willing to speak and say hi to anybody. And I spoke with someone who went to the Bell Center this morning to pay his respects and then is here now looking at the screen for the funeral. And he told me that he had a good instance with him.
We are saying thank you to Guy Lafleur for all the pride that he's given us. It was quite something to say he's one of ours, who's the best hockey player in the world. What pride he gave us to the entire Quebec nation, so he merits state funerals. And we're telling him thank you for all of the happiness that he's given us over all these years, and for all of the closeness that he had to Quebecers. He was truly one of ours. Will you be speaking today? No, I will leave it to those who... He was a man who didn't apologize a lot. Is that a symbol of decomplex Quebec? Well, he was not. He was quite a direct guy, and that's what Quebecers appreciated. He was authentic. He said what he thought at the risk of getting into trouble or of making a few enemies. But in the end, everybody loved him because he was an authentic man.
Yes,
it's a challenge throughout the world. We see it in the U.S. and in Europe, gathering the entire population, and we can see this. Anglophones, Francophones, people from every political background, they're all behind Guy Lafleur. So he's gathered everybody, and we hope that it will inspire many people in the future.
Yes. Yes, so I think we're all proud today, and we're all here to say thank you to Flower. And I think he was the best hockey player, and we were so proud that a guy coming from here was the best player in the world. So, and he was successful in the last few days to reunite all Quebecers to all be together to support what we are and how proud we were about Guy Lafleur.
His personality, his humility.
Yeah, he was a simple guy. He was a direct guy. He wasn't trying to make sentences without any meaning. So he was a direct guy, and I think it was very appreciated by all Quebecers. Merci tout le monde. Bonne journée.
Legault with his wife, Isabelle. So there is, as I said, François Legault, the Premier of Quebec, his wife Isabelle accompanying him as he makes his way into Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral, and just listening to some of the things that he said there, how he unified fans of his play, Anglophone, Francophone, although he does talk about that special pride of Francophones, of Quebecers feeling in a French Canadian who was the best by far in his sport. And it's interesting because he has decried the lack of the Francophone star in the NHL, and in fact, just last year struck a committee to try to spark a resurgence of hockey within Francophone Quebec, so that's something to watch. But François Legault has spoken often about how Guy Lafleur was one of his heroes, and like so many, talking about Saturday nights with his father, watching. You'd wait for hockey night to come on, listen for Danny Gallivan, and those great calls and those great moments that he is remembering too. Douglas Gallivan is with me now. Pat Hickey has gone into the cathedral as an invited guest. So Douglas, thank you for being with me for these final 25 minutes or so. We can see the buses, they have arrived. There is the Prime Minister talking with Jeff Molson, the owner of the team. But we've seen the current generation, the current lineup of Montreal Canadiens arrive, and of course you would expect them to be in attendance today.
Well, the season just ended for them, and of course the way that they ended the season this year, it was tough. They were 32nd overall, but
that's the last.
That is last
year the finals, last place this year. It's been very hard.
The first team to be in the finals one year and then last place the next year. So it's been a really rock and roll kind of 10 months for that team. But as we see the players kind of file in here, we see Josh Anderson in front here, Nick Suzuki, one of the new and up-and-coming stars.
Cole Caulfield will watch for him.
Yeah, there's Carey Price, of course, and big questions about his future with the team moving forward and his health of his knee. But to see these players come in and pay their respects, it was such a wonderful moment in that final game of the season when we saw them score 10 goals after such a rough season, to score 10 goals like that. And you mentioned Cole Caulfield, and his comments after the game really resonated, saying that we did it for Guy. And for them to be able to score 10 goals in that game, just something very special that can only happen in sports.
So you raised a really important point. And again, as we look at some of the guests arriving, we'll continue to bring you the scenes from inside the cathedral as we watch, and the fans outside, of course. But and there is the view of that beautiful inside, the replica of St. Peter's Basilica, Mary, Queen of the World, on René Lévesque, right in downtown Montreal. Guy Lafleur died on Friday. On Sunday, the game against Boston, arch rivals. It couldn't have been more appropriate. But there was this beautiful tribute to him, which lasted an ovation some 10 minutes. And Michel Lacroix, the arena announcer, tried to stop it, but they just kept chanting, you know, Guy, 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 and the ovation. But what was interesting there is François Legault, as he arrives inside the sanctuary, you know, the teammates of Guy Lafleur were there, and they were watching the young players like Suzuki and like Caulfield, who really have no sense. They're young men. They have no sense of what the team in the 70s meant. And so they got a little bit of a taste of that in that ovation and tribute to Guy Lafleur that Sunday night.
One of the great things about this team is that you have people, as you say, passing the torch from one generation to the next. And one of the players that is really on the forefront of that with the team now is Brendan Gallagher. He was given the assistant captain's honor rather early in his career. and really has a keen sense of what it means to wear the CH and what it means to be as part of the Montreal Canadiens. And he talked a little bit about that afterwards too, about him bearing that responsibility of passing it on to the next generation of players. He was here for the Beliveau funeral in 2014.
Can I just pause you there, Doug, just for one moment, because we just want to explain to people watching what we're seeing. This is the beginning of the funeral procession. The Bell Centre is just a few short blocks away from where we are in front of the cathedral. But here you see Montreal Police, mounted unit, bit of an honor guard, leading the motorcade in the funeral procession for Guy Lafleur. And behind, we have Montreal Police on motorcycles. So on horseback and on motorcycle, escorting the limousines that will carry, in that one you see the hearse, the casket of Guy Lafleur. We know there will be 6 honorary pallbearers. We're not sure who that is yet, but we will certainly be seeing it very shortly. And of course, the family, as Douglas and I have been talking about, his mother is still alive. Pierrette is 90 years old and still lives in Thurso, that pulp and paper town in the Gatineau region, the Outaouais region of Quebec in the west. And she will be there. His 4 sisters, Suzanne, Lise, Lucie, and Gisèle. They will be here. His wife, Lise, their 2 sons, Martin and Marc. And we will see that family arrive very soon. So here is the procession outside the Bell Centre. Doug.
Watching that interview that his mother did with our colleague Patrice Waugh yesterday really did hit home, as we see
Commissioner Gary
Bettman
Bettman with the Prime Minister and Jeff Molson, the owner of the team. Gary Bettman paying respects as you would expect. And the Prime Minister, as we heard, his statement acknowledging the hockey player, but the great man as well. Sorry, Doug, continue on.
Oh, no, just getting back to that, as we are celebrating the career of Guy Lafleur and all the great things that he did, the 5 Stanley Cups that he won with the team, the Hart trophies, the Norris trophies, the great work he did in the community, the carrying of the torch from Jean Beliveau in 1971, carrying the burden of being that next great Francophone star. It's a lot of celebration going on, Heather, but at the same time, there's a tremendous amount of sadness here in Montreal, and it was really hit home when his mother was speaking yesterday, talking about how she felt it should be her and not him. It's just so hard to see a mother have to bury their son, regardless of what age that happens at there. But she talked about his visiting him in those final days and the pain that he was in, and how she asked his father to come and take him and remove him from that pain.
That suffering. So further to that point, some of the interviews that his sister Lise, she has become a bit of the family spokesperson since his death. And she's given a number of interviews that I was following and talked about the suffering at the end, the message. It was she really who notified us that he'd passed away. Yeah. She posted on Facebook and then did some interviews here in Montreal. But she talked about how she loved him, but she also said the suffering is over. Mm-hmm. And he was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2019. It returned in October of 2020, and it was a very difficult battle for him at the end with a great deal of suffering. We know that he stopped his treatments around Christmas time. He was on chemo and immunotherapies, and he stopped his treatments. He lost a lot of weight. He was in a lot of pain, but he still was connected to the team, watching their games. He watched the Wild on the Tuesday night before he passed away, watched the first half of that game. But she talked about his final hours and how he wanted to see his whole family. Before him, he moved into a palliative care center in Kirkland in the West Island. He's from Ile Bizarre, which is also in the West Island, but moved into this palliative care center, and they all were able to be there to stand at the foot of the bed so he could see them all. He'd given them jerseys, special jerseys, in his memory. One of the sisters wore that. And then Martin was with him on that Tuesday night, one of his sons, and then the night he passed away, his son Marc, holding his hand until that moment of his passing. And then Marc, just an absolute cri de coeur, such an emotional message that he posted about how he wished he could stay with the family forever and how sad he was to lose his father, of course, who had stood by him all his life. Marc has had a number of serious run-ins with the law, and they ended up involving Guy Lafleur, but he always stood by his second son, and he paid tribute to him as a father, the best father ever, and said things are going to go well. Even though you're no longer with us. So the family we will see, and again, we will watch this as we look from on high. Now, Douglas, if anyone needs proof of what a moment this is for the people of Montreal, for the people of Quebec, there are 15 cameras covering this from every conceivable angle, outside and in. There is a drone. I'm hearing helicopters overhead again to bring you these aerial shots. And obviously, there are more limousines here than even were indicated on the program, the earlier rendition. But again, here is the parade, and it's come from the Bell Centre, now the home of the Montreal Canadiens.
Yep. They're coming on Avenue des Canadiens right now in front of the Bell Centre. They will turn onto Peel Street, which will bring them up to René Lévesque, and then they will make their way to the cathedral here. But as they slowly make their way past the Bell Centre, and as they start to turn onto Peel Street right here, really emotional moments. Guy Lafleur, 70 years old, dying of lung cancer. You know, we look at this and we frame this in the same sense of, say, Jean Beliveau or Rocket Richard, and the scenes that we saw for that there. But there's just a tremendous sense of loss to lose Guy Lafleur at this time in his life, when there was a feeling that when Beliveau passed in 2014, and we remember that image of Guy Lafleur kneeling in front of the casket of Jean Beliveau, and just that powerful image about him being the last one standing of those 4 statues that stand outside of the Bell Centre. To lose him only 8 years later, a profound sense of sadness here in Quebec today, and across the country, and maybe even the world too, as we see Guy Lafleur making his final approach to the cathedral.
I think that you get a sense from this particular perspective, Douglas, that it is a very short drive.
Yes.
And what is interesting to me here, now we're not seeing any fans along this part, I guess some walking alongside to accompany the funeral procession. Perhaps at the conclusion of the service, but I'm struck by the stillness. I'm struck by behind us, the fans, so many in Lafleur jerseys, 4 or 5 deep. But we'll see what happens when the procession arrives here, but for now, very respectful, very still and quiet. We haven't heard the chant of Guy, Guy, Guy that perhaps we will when the coffin arrives, to meet the honor guard and the honorary pallbearers, and to meet ultimately at the entrance the Archbishop of Montreal, Christian Lépine, who is going to preside over this service. And again, it is a national funeral. So we will hear eulogies to Guy Lafleur from 5 different people, we expect. We will hear special musical celebrations, special guests planned for that, and then a traditional Catholic funeral mass. So that we will have for you in its entirety when it gets underway in just about 20 minutes' time. It looks like they're pretty much according to schedule, and we do anticipate an 11 o'clock start from Mary, Queen of the World.
And it's not just the invited guests who are inside the cathedral today. It is a small space, but they did make room for some public to be in there. I've been told 120 people who applied to come in for the funeral have gotten seats inside. So there are the people, of course, outside watching on the screens, watching as the procession arrives here at the church, but also all the people who have the privilege of being inside there for this emotional moment that we'll be seeing today. And people coming from far and wide for this one as well, not just for the funeral today, but for his when he was lying in state
yes,
at the Bell Centre over the last couple of days. My colleague Jay Turnbull was been talking to fans.
Excuse me, Jay. I think we get a look there. One of the cameras there is the Canadiens flag draped over the casket of Guy Lafleur as the funeral procession makes its way ever closer here to Mary, Queen of the World. And it was interesting with earlier guests talking about how it won't be a Quebec flag over the casket. No. This is a Montreal Canadiens moment, and we know from so many moments, not just very unfortunate funerals of Maurice Richard and Jean Beliveau, but just the celebrations, the ceremonies, the anniversaries. Nobody does ceremony like the Montreal Canadiens. It is all about this team.
Absolutely.
They really are. So as we look at this, and I'm struck before both of our times, Doug, but we're on René Lévesque, and the street 1 north of us is St. Catherine. The next major street north of us is St. Catherine, St. Catherine. And the mayor of the day, Mayor Drapeau, Jean Drapeau, as Laure had it, used to say, you know, the Stanley Cup parade will follow the usual route, because it became just such an assumption that the Canadiens would win it again. It was the dynasty, 76 to 79 seasons, every year, 4 in a row. But I mean, imagine what that scene must have been like. So many people taking time off and just this celebration along that Stanley Cup parade route.
You're giving me goosebumps just mentioning it right now. You know, you see the videos of the parades that Guy Lafleur was involved in, and just the proximity that he had to the fans as well. You see, nowadays we have the barriers, everyone would be kind of held back, but you see those videos, people were crowded onto the streets of St. Catharines, and the cars were barely crawling along it because Guy was stopping and shaking hands with everyone along that route of the Stanley Cup parade. And of course, he got an opportunity to do that 5 times. The first one in '73, and then of course the 4 back-to-back, culminating in the one in 1979. Just
the procession very close to our location. Canadiens fan in number 10 paying farewell to number 10. The flower, Le Démon Blanc, the blonde demon, once he took off that helmet in 1974 and let those locks flow. I mean, he was a totally different player, and he kept the helmet off right through to the end of his playing days. He had the grandfather, of course, that he was able to do that.
And many people of my age remember him for that.
Yes, the hair.
I honestly remember him playing for the Quebec Nordique. And when I was collecting hockey cards as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, getting that card and seeing him as one of the only guys without the helmet on. And then going back and seeing all the videos and understanding exactly why he took that helmet off, because that flow
it freed him, and that flow was something, and he was just, you know, those end-to-end rushes on the right wing with the hair flowing. Who can forget them? I'm going to come back to you in just a second, Douglas. I'm going to join in with Sarah Levitt, who is now watching as the funeral procession arrives. Sarah?
Yeah, so we'll just pan towards the cathedral right now because the procession is making its way right now. You can see that the horses have arrived, and the hearse and the family are arriving at the cathedral. I just want to say that right now crowds have gathered on the other side. You can hear clapping from the crowd right now. In fact, people have been gathering here to watch and pay tribute to number 10. They have set up 2 screens outside so that these fans can watch what's happening inside, and there are a lucky few that made it inside. I say lucky because they want to pay their respects. About 100 fans did get to go inside. I saw them escorted in earlier today, and you know, we talked to many of the celebrity or the sports people here, but it's really these fans that I have found so interesting to speak to because of just the enormous amount of impact that Guy Lafleur had on each individual. And there's stories from so many of them, one telling me that he met Guy Lafleur for his 50th birthday, and then 2 months later, his daughter received a birthday card from Guy Lafleur. And that's just one story. Another story, a person who told me that he had the same hairdresser as Guy Lafleur, and they went to the hairdresser's anniversary party, and the man said, I shook Guy Lafleur's hand and I said, I've always wanted to meet a legend. Guy Lafleur turned around and said, I guess you'll have to wait a little bit longer. You know, that kind of shows you his humbleness. And so I've been hearing a lot of those stories from the fans here today, just getting ready to go inside and hear the funeral.
So, Sarah, just pause, if you would. What we're seeing is the limousines carrying the family members and having some private moments as they emerge from their limousines. In the foreground, you will watch the camera as they are greeted at the ceremony. And in the foreground, I can tell you the hearse that is bearing the casket of Guy Lafleur is right in front of us, and we will watch as the honor guard and the honorary pallbearers carry that into the cathedral. Again, you see Montreal police represented. You see as well members of the Royal Canadian Air Force represented, an acknowledgement of his time as honorary colonel, a number of years at CFB Bagotville and Saguenay. That involved many ceremonial functions, but 4 trips to Afghanistan to rally the troops, to play ball hockey with those troops. And those are moments and connections that are very, very proudly remembered here. And as part of that, we do expect in about an hour and a half to have a fly pass from a CF-18 Hornet based at CFB Bagotville, as we see those who are
It's his mother.
Members of the family arrive. His four sisters, Suzanne, Lise, Lucie, Giselle. You saw his mother, Douglas,
Yes,
entering.
Pierrette was there.
That is Pierrette. She is 90 years old, and she is alive and mourning her son. And as you were telling us, not anything a mother wishes to do.
No, it's a very difficult situation, of course, and it really does hit home how we've lost such a legend here before his time. Jean Beliveau dying in 2014 at 83 years old. Guy Lafleur, 70 years old. As we look now, as it appears the casket is about to come out of the hearse.
We will be watching that. The ceremony of respect as he is delivered to this beautiful cathedral, Mary, Queen of the World. It is the seat of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese in Montreal, and it is the Archbishop of Montreal, Christian Lépine, who will preside over the service. I had the opportunity yesterday to spend some time in the sanctuary, and we talked about what he is planning. It will be a traditional Roman Catholic Mass as well, in accordance with the wishes of the family, but also it is a national funeral to acknowledge someone who has meant so much to the province, has contributed so much to the life of the province of Quebec. And so there will be eulogies from people who are connected to Guy Lafleur. And let us just pause, and I will pause, so you can see what happens when these fans see Guy Lafleur's casket for the first time here before the cathedral. So, as expected, it is a little more respectful and perhaps muted at this point. The service has yet to begin, but we'll be listening at its conclusion as these fans wait. But you heard the applause, and I hope you were able to hear through my microphone the cheers. Merci, Guy. Thank you, Guy. Bravo, Guy. So you're hearing, as I speak, and I promise we'll be playing the entire funeral service for you in its entirety, but just explaining the beautiful sacred music that you are hearing. There are big screens here just on René Lévesque for the fans that have assembled. The choir has begun to sing for the funeral mass and for the funeral service for Guy Lafleur. So to give you a view there inside the church, and Doug, we will not speak over all of the special prayers and scriptural readings and the eulogies, but over this initial beautiful music, just again, to set this up inside Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral, the replica of St. Peter's Basilica, one of the most beautiful churches in Montreal, one of the largest in Quebec, and it is where we will be watching very closely for the national funeral for number 10, Guy Lafleur. Very soon, we would expect to see the cross proceeding down the nave to the altar, the Archbishop Christian Lépine. He will be assisted in the service by the Archbishop of Quebec as well. Many special readings and passages eulogies from 5 different people.
We expect to hear from Patrick Waugh today. Saw pictures of him in the church earlier. Jeff Molson reaching out to him directly, asking him to speak on Lafleur's behalf.
Maybe he'll share the story of when he was in net and Guy Lafleur returned as a New York Ranger and scored 2 goals on him in 1989.
Yeah, he got a couple past him.
He did, and Patrick Waugh has said subsequently that he's never seen an ovation for an opposing player in the Forum scored on the Montreal Canadiens, but it was Lafleur, and they were so happy to see him back. And of course, concluding his career with 2 years in the Quebec Nordique. So, as we see the cross and the Mass is prepared to begin, and those in the sanctuary rise to greet the coffin, the casket draped in the Montreal flag to pay tribute to one of the greatest players ever to play for that team and to wear that jersey. We'll watch it live in its entirety. The National Funeral for Guy Lafleur on CBC News Network.
Au nom du Père et du Fils et du Saint-Esprit, la paix soit avec vous. Vous êtes venus nombreux en présence par les médias. Nous sommes réunis pour entourer de notre affection, de notre sympathie,
to show our love and our sympathy and our friendship those who are mourning. I'm thinking specifically of Lise, Guy Lafleur's wife, his children, Marc, Martin, and his spouse, as well as his granddaughter, Sienna Rose, his mother, Pierrette, his sisters, and their entire families, as well as the numerous friends and teammates of Guy Lafleur.
Monsieur le Premier Ministre,
I warmly welcome the Premier of Quebec, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Lieutenant Governor,
Madame la
Premiers, Supreme Court Justice,
Présidente de l'Assemblée nationale,
President of the National Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, ministers,
et Messieurs les chefs
the leader of the official opposition, and the leaders of the second and third parties of the opposition, the leader of the Bloc Québécois,
Assemblée des Premières Nations Québec-Labrador,
the leader of the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador, Mayor of Montreal,
Messieurs les élus municipaux,
and elected municipal officials,
et anciens
MNAs, senators, and former parliamentarians,
National Hockey League, senior executives, teams owners, and presidents, Monsieur le propriétaire et président du club de hockey Le Canadien de Montréal,
the owner and president of the Montreal Canadiens, distinguished guests,
Gérald de Cyprien-Lacroix,
the Cardinal Gérald Cyprien Lacroix.
ensemble,
We want to affirm together
que nous tissons tout au long
all of these relationships
que nous avons tissé,
that we develop over a lifetime,
liens qui ne s'arrêtent
that we've developed with Guy,
pas à la mort.
relationships that do not stop with death.
Avant de poursuivre la célébration liturgique, je vous
Before we go on with the celebration,
invite maintenant vous
I invite you to hear testimonials. Please be seated.
Bonjour, mesdames, messieurs. Good morning.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Ceux qui témoignent
It's a privilege for me to introduce those who will speak of Guy Lafleur today.
tout d'abord le propriétaire, président et chef
First, the owner, President, CEO of the Montreal Canadiens,
executive officer of the Montreal Canadiens, Jeff Molson.
Dans la dernière semaine, nous avons
in the past week,
de l'incommensurable
we have seen
que Guy Lafleur a eu
the influence that Guy Lafleur has had on a large number of people in Quebec,
et dans toutes les
in the world of hockey,
dans lesquelles il a été.
and in all communities in which he was involved.
Son impact a traversé trois
His
générations
impact
des Canadiens de Montréal.
touched 3 generations of Montreal Canadiens fans.
Son sens
There were those
talent à l'œuvre sur la glace.
who saw his sensational talent on the ice in the 70s and 80s. And then there were the children and the grandchildren of these fans who themselves learned about Guy Lafleur from their parents and grandparents. There was also the millions of people who had the opportunity to see this passionate man and this dedicated man. Whether it's when he gave back to hospitals or other main causes, by supporting the military or by helping children in need, Guy Lafleur was there. It is this man, the Guy Lafleur, that I knew the most. The warm person, the generous person that he was after his career.
He was equally as passionate about his role as ambassador to the Montreal Canadiens. When we asked Guy to help in the community initiatives we were doing, he always accepted. But that was just the beginning for him. When Guy Lafleur walked into a room, jaws dropped, cameras came out for selfies, and people immediately started searching for Sharpies and a piece of paper for his autograph. And there was never a time when anyone in that room didn't get that selfie or that signature. Everyone would leave with expectations met, but Guy made an even greater impact in the room. People realized that he was not only a superstar, Hall of Fame hockey player, but also a warm, humble, and normal human being with an outstanding sense of humor. While people asked him questions about his illustrious career, he happily shared stories, told jokes, and laughed out loud with people he hadn't known just minutes before. A man who had time for anyone and everyone. People not only left that room with a smile, but a special memory of someone who went above and beyond every time for everyone. I think the one reason people trusted Guy so much was because he always told you exactly what he was thinking. He never beat around the bush. He never used cliches. He went straight to what he was really thinking. He just spoke from his heart, and his heart was passionate. When he spoke, he meant it. And although his comments could be hard to take at times, he was usually right, always honest, and this is what Quebecers love so much about Guy Lafleur. Guy était un ambassadeur hors pair qui a représenté.
Guy was an ambassador who represented the Montreal Canadiens perfectly. He was a winner on the ice, the best player in the best team in the world, as an individual and as a teammate. He was no different off the ice. An incredible human being and a team player for the well-being of communities who need him most. We have lost one of the greats of the history of the Montreal Canadiens, and he can never be replaced. But we have also learned a lot from Guy, a man who had class and humbleness that made us forget that he was a star. His humble approach with everyone, regardless of who they were, is a lesson for us all. I'm honored to have learned from Guy Lafleur and will be inspired forever by him. Thank you for everything, Guy.
Membre du Temple de la Renommée et gagnant de 10 Coupes Stanley. Member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, 10-time Stanley Cup champion. Le capitaine, team captain, le numéro 12, number 12, Yvan Cournoyer.
La famille du club de hockey des Canadiens a perdu.
The Montreal Canadiens family has lost a great legend, a man who loved the public, and his public loved him. Today, it is an honor to speak to you of Guy Lafleur, my friend. I did not have the opportunity to see Guy play in the juniors, but the first time that I saw Guy on the ice with us, he truly impressed me.
Ça va faire tout un joueur de hockey. Quel bon joueur qu'il
I
va.
said, he's going to be quite the hockey player. What a good player he's going to be. Thank you, Sam Pollock, for having drafted Guy Lafleur. It allowed us, the players and the spectators, to appreciate for several years and to win 5 Stanley Cups. To Guy's family, especially Lise, Martin, Marc, Mrs. Lafleur. The last few years were very difficult. Lise, Guy loved you very much. I'm certain that he would have told you to rest
Et courageuse.
and to be strong and courageous.
Est très difficile à accepter.
The decision to retire is very difficult to accept, especially at 31.
C'est d'être un joueur de
We leave what we love the most in life, and that is to be a hockey player. And that is why I called Guy sometimes just to see how he was doing. But I could see that the decision to retire was affecting him quite a bit. And we would talk. I went through this as well. We would often talk. And at some point, on a Friday, I called him up and I said, Guy, how are you doing? He said, oh, it's going all right. I've got highs and lows, but it's going okay. He said, Yvan, you know, he really liked cars, right? And he said, Yvan, yesterday I washed my car. He said, 3 times. I said, what? 3 times? So then I realized that Guy was the only guy who could wash his car 3 times was Guy Lafleur. So I was not surprised when he came back. Guy left us too soon. But if he wants to make another comeback, you are welcome, Guy. Guy, Guy, Guy.
Membre du Temple de la Renommée et gagnant de 6 Coupes Stanley. Member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, part of the famous Big Three, 6-time Stanley Cup champion. Le numéro 19, number 19, Larry Robinson.
C'est un honneur et un privilège pour moi
It is an honor and a privilege for me to be before you today and to honor a person who is very special. I could speak for hours about the type of person that Guy was, but I think that you already know how incredible he was. Guy said one day, play every day like it's your last. Nobody embodied that philosophy more than Guy, and not only did he play every game to the max, but he also lived his life to the maximum off the ice. I would like to thank you all for being here today so that we can all celebrate the life of this incredible man.
It's an honor and a privilege for me to stand before you today and pay tribute to a very special and irreplaceable person in our lives. I could go on for hours talking about the kind of person Guy was, but I think that all of you here already know what an amazing individual he was. Guy once said, Play every game as if it is your last one. No one embodied that philosophy more than Guy did, and not only did he play each game to its fullest, he tried to live his life to the fullest off the ice as well. I want to thank you all very much for coming out today so that we can all celebrate this amazing man's life. And in closing, we lost two very special people this past week to cancer in Mike Bossy and Guy Lafleur, and heaven has them now. And it is my hope and my prayer that they're not looking for a big defenseman just yet. Thank you.
Membre du Temple de la Renommée et gagnant de 3 Coupes Stanley et autant de trophées Frank Selke. Member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, 3-time winner of the Frank Selke Trophy and 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Le capitaine, team captain, le numéro 21, number 21, Guy Carbonneau.
C'est un réel plaisir pour moi d'être ici ce soir.
It is a true pleasure for me to be here today to pay a last homage to Guy Lafleur. Guy was a special person. He was an extraordinary hockey player who could do things on the ice that we all dreamed of doing. But what made him truly special was how he made people around him feel. He inspired people around him and made them feel important. I'm among those that Guy inspired. I was a young 11-year-old boy, born in Sept-Îles when Guy Lafleur started with the Canadiens. And like for most kids my age, he became my idol instantaneously. My friends and me all wanted to imitate Guy Lafleur. He stood above all the others. He said what he thought. He played in his own way, and that is why we loved him so much. He brought out the best in his teammates, and we had to be at our best to follow his pace. When I went to the first training camp with the Canadiens, I had to pinch myself. From the first days, they put me with Steve Shutt and Guy Lafleur. From memory, I don't think that I touched the puck once because I was afraid to disappoint them. But I was on the ice with my idol. These guys had just won 4 Stanley Cups in a row, and Guy had just won the Hart Ross, the Connie Smythe, the Hart Trophy, in addition to being named to the All-Star team several times. And despite all of this, he was there and he did everything that he could so that I felt welcomed. That was Guy Lafleur, a superstar, but also one of the boys. He was one of the most generous and accessible people that I've ever met. Even after he retired, when we would go out west to play hockey with the former players, or when we played softball in the summer throughout Canada, people would line up to meet him. Guy always took the time for every person there. He was truly proud of representing the Montreal Canadiens. He led through example, and he established a standard for those who came after him. Today, we say goodbye to a legend. We're losing one of the greatest hockey players and ambassadors that our sport has known, but we also lose a friend. Thank you for everything, Guy.
Membre du Temple de la Renommée, gagnant du trophée Jennings à 5 reprises et du trophée Vézina à 3 occasions. Il a remporté 4 Coupes Stanley. Hockey Hall of Famer, 4-time Stanley Cup champion. He won the Jennings 5 times, the Vézina Trophy on 3 occasions. Le numéro 33, number 33, Patrick Roy.
Dans les années 70, tous les jeunes joueurs de hockey du Québec.
In the 70s, all young hockey players in Quebec dreamed about being a Guy Lafleur. I dreamed about being a Ken Dryden so that I could one day play on the same team as Guy Lafleur. Guy was larger than life, and his exploits had no limits. He was the idol, the hero, the inspiration, and the living proof that we can and must dream big. In 1984, when I went to the Forum and went to the locker room for my first practice with the Montreal Canadiens, I thought about the hero before me. His charisma, number 10, was established in 5 minutes. I was intimidated, impressed. It was surreal to me. Before going on the ice, he hit my pads and he said, "Hey kid, welcome to the Canadiens." Because that is Guy Lafleur. It's heart, a profound respect and generosity. He is the guy who takes the time because he knows that for you, it's just these few words will make all the difference. It is his way of saying that now we're on the same team, that he's going to be there for you, even if he'll shoot on you nonstop in the next few minutes.
Notre affrontement le plus mémorable remonte au 4 février 1989.
The 4th of February, 1989, Guy was coming back to play. He was making his comeback, and this time he was wearing the Rangers uniform. It was also his big comeback to the Forum. During the warm-up, the crowd was going crazy and was chanting his name. It was a magical night, so magical that when he scored 2 goals on me, I got a standing ovation. That night, I saw a hero coming back home, finding his fans again, and getting this huge dose of love with much humility. That night, that hero even found the way to make my heirs more relatives and to throw flowers to his former teammates. That night at the Forum, we all realized how much we had missed him. Years later, when he was at the Videotron Center to film an ad, he came to see me and took the time to speak with me, as he did in the locker room in 1984. It was his way to hit my pads. It was his way of taking care of reminding us that even if we only spend a bit of time in a team, belonging, friendship, and pride goes much beyond a hockey season. Since the announcement of his death, tributes have multiplied, and half of the population in Quebec has a picture with Guy Lafleur, because Guy was also that. Generosity, authenticity, and honesty, profound respect for fans. He wanted to give back. He was truly interested in others. And he wanted to take that time that made all the difference in people's lives. I could tell you that even us, former teammates, we have our picture with Guy Lafleur. We've encapsulated that moment where he took the time, where he listened to us, where he gave us advice or supported us. And we have to remember that at the end of the day, it's a team before all. Guy, when I think about him, I realize that our relationship looked like a hockey period with 3 periods: as a teammate, as an adversary on the ice, and as a former player. With the void that your departure leaves, well, I would have gone into overtime. But I understand that you're keeping this for the people up there, beyond the stats and the exploits. Today, we look at your legacy and the values that you have passed on to generations. Rest in peace, my friend. Everybody knows that you're the real deal.
Pour rendre hommage à Guy, Martin Lafleur, accompagné de sa tante, Francine Barré.
Early in my life, I realized that I had an exceptional father. There are so many things that I admire in my father. The one that comes to mind immediately is that he always took care of his family, despite his numerous commitments. He loved being with us. I remember when he would bring me to the Forum during the Canadiens' practices. He also did it with the Rangers and the Nordiques. My father did not demonstrate a lot, but I felt all of the pride that he had in me. He wanted me to be part of his team. I will also remember his perseverance in hockey, but also in the different spheres of his life. He was proud of us, even in difficult times that we went through as a family. He was behind us, and he assured us through his actions and words. He always wanted the best for my mom, for my brother, and for myself. To tell you that my father was generous is an understatement. He was also for his mother and his sisters, and in fact, he wanted to take care of everybody, even people that he did not know. I would also tell you that his humility always impressed me. He stayed true to himself despite all of the attention around him. I appreciate that I was close to him, whether as a partner in business, in hockey games that we played together with the former Canadiens, or simply as a family at home, by the pool, even when he would burn the hamburgers on the barbecue every time, and of course blamed the barbecue. I have 1,001 good memories, and I could speak for hours. My father was not perfect, but he did all that he could so that we could be happy and have everything that we needed. He gave everything to his family and to his fans, and accomplished himself through his two passions, because he had two passions: hockey and piloting a helicopter. Thank you for all the values that you've transmitted to us, Dad. We love you. Before handing it over, I would like to thank all the fans who supported my father from the beginning to the end. You are wonderful. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank the Montreal Canadiens, who supported us at every level. You help us every day to climb a mountain that seems insurmountable. Thank you so much. And finally, I would like to thank the government of Quebec, who are honoring my father as a hockey player, but also as a human being. Thank you so much.
Bonjour à tous. Je fais partie de la...
Hello, everyone. I am part of Guy's wonderful family, and I would like to pay tribute to him. But first, it is true to say that behind every great man, there is a great woman. I would like to salute the strength and the courage that Lise has demonstrated during this hard fight that she went through with Guy. Lise, your accompaniment during these long months was a 5-star. Thank you, my dear sister. Now to come back to Guy, we can say that he lived his life as he played hockey with passion, with determination. He spoke from the heart, and that is why people loved him, and we did as well. And actually, there was no barrier between him and the fans, and I can tell you that during the 50 years where we were part of the same family, it never happened that we could eat at the restaurant or go to any place, really, without somebody asking him for an autograph. And it was always with the same gratitude towards people who showed him their affection that he would sign, and he would speak to every single person he met. We could recognize the generous human being that he was. I often heard discussions about hockey, and unanimously, people always came back to the famous line, Maurice Richard, Jean Béliveau, and Guy Lafleur, except for Guy, who would quickly say, quickly mention the other great players that he had the opportunity to play with. In his personal life and in his professional life, Guy did things his way. A friend of the family, thank you, Carmen, compared Guy to a diamond in the rough. It's true. A diamond that no one managed to polish. And I tip my hat to him for this. I will remember forever the big hockey player that he was, with his natural skating abilities, his smile, his golden locks, but mainly I will remember the man, a humble, generous, honest man that he was. Despite his fight against cancer, in the end, the illness won. I think that Guy has not said his last word. First, he's leaving a bit of himself in the heart, not only of the members of his family and his in-laws and friends, but also in the hearts of each Quebecer. Furthermore, he made sure, through his foundation, that he would contribute to medical research. In the end, I'm pleased to think about the fact that he got on board the helicopter that he loved to pilot and that he flew off, proud of what he's accomplished and free. Thank you, Guy, for all the wonderful moments that we've spent together as a family and all the good red wine that we drank together.
Place maintenant à Madame Ginette Renaud.
L'essentiel, c'est d'être aimé. Le reste importe peu. La seule vérité, c'est compter pour quelqu'un. Quoi qu'il puisse arriver, c'est entrer dans son cœur et n'en sortir jamais. C'est recevoir autant qu'on aimerait donner, ne plus s'appartenir, en être rassuré. C'est voir la joie de l'autre et fondre de bonheur, mériter sa confiance et devenir meilleur. L'essentiel, c'est d'être aimé, contrairement à tout ce qu'on peut raconter. Ce n'est pas la fortune ou la célébrité qui ne sont que du vin et ne font que passer. Je crois que l'important est fait du petit rien, être attendu le soir et courir en chemin. Un des plus beaux cadeaux que ici, Guy. L'essentiel, jour après jour, c'est le rire aux éclats d'un enfant qui accourt et qui nous saute au cœur en guise de bonjour. Que demander de plus quand ses bras nous entourent? Le reste importe peu. La seule vérité, c'est compter pour quelqu'un, quoi qu'il puisse arriver. Être un jour exilé en pays étranger et avoir dans son cœur quelqu'un qui parlait, c'est inspirer à l'autre un sentiment si fort qu'il pourrait nous poursuivre au-delà de la mort. C'est d'être aimé encore et toujours. Mon amour.
Tournons-nous vers le Christ avec confiance, en reconnaissant que nous sommes pécheurs et ouvrons nos cœurs à la miséricorde de Dieu.
Let's turn to Christ.
Que Dieu Tout-Puissant nous fasse miséricorde, qu'il nous pardonne nos péchés et nous conduise à la vie éternelle. Amen. Prions le Seigneur. Seigneur Dieu, quand prend fin la vie présente, tu ouvres l'accès à la vie future. Nous t'en prions, fais que sous ta conduite, l'âme de ton serviteur Guy obtienne de participer à la rédemption éternelle. Par Jésus-Christ, ton Fils, notre Seigneur, qui vit et règne avec toi dans l'unité du Saint-Esprit, Dieu pour les siècles des siècles.
Lecture du livre du prophète Isaïe. En ce jour-là, le Seigneur de l'univers préparera pour tous les peuples un festin sur sa montagne. Sur cette montagne, il fera disparaître le voile de deuil qui enveloppe tous les peuples et le linceul qui couvre toutes les nations. Il fera disparaître la mort pour toujours. Le Seigneur Dieu essuiera les larmes sur tous les visages et par toute la terre, il effacera l'humiliation de son peuple. Le Seigneur a parlé. En ce jour-là, on dira, voici notre Dieu. En lui, nous espérions et il nous a sauvés. C'est lui le Seigneur. En lui, nous espérions, exultons, réjouissons-nous, il nous a sauvés. Parole du Seigneur.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons and daughters of God. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received a spirit of adoption to sonship. When we cry, Abba, Father, it is that very Spirit, bearing witness with our spirit, that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if in fact we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. The word of the Lord.
Le Seigneur soit avec vous.
Et avec votre...
Évangile de Jésus-Christ, selon Saint Jean. Gloire à toi, Seigneur. En ce temps-là, Jésus disait à ses disciples, « Que votre cœur ne soit pas bouleversé. Vous croyez en Dieu? Croyez aussi en moi. Dans la maison de mon Père, il y a de nombreuses demeures. Sinon, voudrais-je dire, je pars vous préparer une place. Quand je serai parti, vous préparer une place, je reviendrai et je vous amènerai auprès de moi, afin que là où je suis, vous soyez vous aussi. Pour aller où je vais, vous savez le chemin. » Thomas lui dit, « Seigneur, nous ne savons pas où tu vas. Comment pourrions-nous savoir le chemin? » Jésus répond, « Moi, je suis le chemin, la vérité et la vie. Personne ne va vers le Père sans passer par moi. » Acclamons la parole de Dieu. Louange à toi, Seigneur Jésus.
Aujourd'hui, nous nous retrouvons rassemblés par Guy Lafleur.
We are gathered here for Guy Lafleur.
Ses racines était sa famille.
His roots were his family.
Sa passion était le
His passion was hockey.
Son modèle était Jean Béliveau.
His model, his role model was Jean Béliveau. His inspiration were the fans. His horizon was to surpass himself continuously.
Since April 22nd, we all have been immersed in both sadness and gratitude. Sadness at the loss of a loved one, and gratitude for his life of generosity that radiated in every direction and touched so many lives. Chère famille de Guy, nous nous unissons
Dear family,
à votre peine
we are gathered,
et nous exprimons
we share your mourning, and we express how Guy
dans notre vie
was
personnelle,
important to our personal lives,
sociale.
our family lives, and our social life.
Pour votre propre
We
générosité
thank you for your own generosity
en personne,
and through our presence in person and through the media.
de notre compassion pour vous
We communicate our compassion to you
et de notre
in
soutien
this time of mourning,
en pensée.
and we support you in our thoughts and in our prayers.
Qu'as-tu que tu n'as pas reçu, nous dit Saint Paul.
What do you have that you haven't received? Tells us St. Paul. Guy received much,
De donner en retour.
and his joy was to give back,
Joie avec les partisans et le grand public.
to share joy with the fans and the public at large.
Son humilité en faisait un homme d'équipe,
His humbleness
toujours très répété,
made him a team player, always close to the people, accessible and attentive.
des autographes et donnait des poignées
He
de
signed autographs and shook hands.
He was a great athlete. He made the game thrilling, playing every game as if it were his last, giving the best of himself, surpassing himself constantly. He was also a man of courage, particularly evident when he returned to the game after being away for a few years. If in the ice rink he was a determined competitor, off the ice he was equally determined to say yes, to support every good cause, especially those for underprivileged children. He knew how to go beyond himself in order to meet others on their terms. L'histoire de Guy est
The
l'histoire
story of Guy
d'un cœur battant,
is a story of a heart, a beating heart,
d'un cœur qui ne
a heart that beat so much, a heart that never stopped beating.
disponible jusqu'à dans la maladie. En se faisant,
He was available
cette
even when he was fighting cancer.
sa famille,
It's a story of heart between Guy, his family, the public, the population,
ces jours-ci à un passage.
who find themselves at a crossroads. Our heart,
Par le décès d'un époux, d'un père,
feeling the pain of the death of a spouse, a father, a son, and a brother, a friend, and an example. Our heart thirsts.
de mémoire,
Our heart thirsts for memories,
d'affection se manifeste.
and the testimonials
Notre cœur
keep coming.
a soif de présence.
Our heart thirsts for presence,
Et nos engagements immédiats
and we leave our daily lives and our immediate commitments
pour accompagner sa famille
to be gathered by Guy to accompany his family,
pour lui.
to be together and pray for him.
Le cœur a soif d'un avenir plus grand,
Our heart thirsts
d'un avenir plus
for a greater future,
où le voile de
a
deuil
future that is greater than we are, where the veil of mourning will disappear,
en passage
where death itself is transformed
éternel.
into a path from this world to eternal life, and where solitude and tears will be abated. Here's our God, says Isaiah. He prepares for us eternal life.
De vérité et de bonté. Il prépare pour nous une demeure et une fête au-delà de tout ce que l'on peut imaginer. Une immense fête de famille où nous sommes les enfants de Dieu, où nous retrouverons nos proches et l'humanité. Que votre cœur ne soit pas bouleversé, nous dit Jésus. La vie humaine est un don précieux.
Human life is a precious gift.
La vie éternelle est un don de Dieu.
It is made to receive eternal life as a gift from God.
C'est une soif d'absolu.
Our thirst is a thirst of absolutes, and God is the absolute. He comes to us through Jesus Christ.
L'heure de l'abandon à Dieu à travers la mort
The abandon to God through death is the last of our path on this world that we realize by following in the steps of Jesus, who died and was resuscitated, the model
chère famille de Guy.
who knocks at the door of our hearts.
Nous unissons
Dear family,
que Dieu vous apporte réconfort.
we pray with you. May God bring you comfort.
Nous inspire la solidarité
May He inspire us to show solidarity.
en sa miséricorde.
And may He welcome God, or Guy.
Ensemble, nous avons écouté la parole de Dieu qui nous invite à l'espérance, que notre prière au Christ se fasse maintenant humble et confiante.
Après chaque intention, nous répondrons « Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour ».
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour.
Pour Guy Lafleur, que nous confions maintenant à la miséricorde de Dieu. Pour les défunts que nous avons connus et aimés, ensemble, prions.
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour.
Pour nous tous ici rassemblés, que notre foi soit plus forte que notre peine et que nous n'allions pas sans espérance. Ensemble, prions.
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour.
Pour ceux et celles qui ont été éprouvés pendant la pandémie, qu'ils ne se croient pas abandonnés de Dieu et qu'ils gardent confiance. Ensemble, prions.
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour.
For all the children of God, may their life on earth become more fraternal and just. Let us pray.
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour.
For our Mother Church, may she faithfully proclaim the mystery of Christ, Lord and of the living and of the dead. Let us pray.
Souviens-toi, Seigneur, de ton amour. Seigneur Jésus, toi qui es là au milieu des croyants rassemblés en ton nom, écoute leurs supplications et daigne répondre à leurs appels. Toi qui vis et règnes pour les siècles des siècles. Amen. Priez, frères et sœurs, que mon sacrifice, qui est aussi le vôtre, soit agréable à Dieu le Père Tout-Puissant. Que le Seigneur reçoive de vos mains ce sacrifice à la louange et à la gloire de son nom, pour notre bien et celui de toute l'Église. Sois favorable à nos offrandes, Seigneur, que ton serviteur Guy parvienne à la gloire avec ton Fils à qui nous sommes unis par l'admirable sacrement de son amour, lui qui vit et règne pour les siècles des siècles. Le Seigneur soit avec vous. Élevons notre cœur. Rendons grâce au Seigneur notre Dieu.
Cela est juste et bon.
Vraiment, il est juste et bon pour ta gloire et notre salut de t'offrir notre action de grâce toujours et en tout lieu. Seigneur, Père très saint, Dieu éternel et tout-puissant, par le Christ notre Seigneur. C'est en lui qu'a resplendi pour nous l'espérance de la résurrection bienheureuse. Et si la loi de la mort nous afflige, la promesse de l'immortalité nous apporte la consolation. Car pour ceux qui croient en toi, Seigneur, la vie est transformée, elle n'est pas enlevée. Et lorsque prend fin leur séjour sur la terre, ils ont déjà une demeure éternelle dans les cieux. C'est pourquoi avec les anges et les archanges, avec les puissances d'en haut et tous les esprits bienheureux, nous chantons l'hymne de ta gloire et sans fin, nous proclamons. Tu es vraiment saint Dieu de l'univers, et il est juste que toute la création proclame ta louange, car c'est toi qui donnes la vie, c'est toi qui sanctifies toutes choses par ton Fils Jésus-Christ notre Seigneur, avec la puissance de l'Esprit Saint. Et tu ne cesses de rassembler ton peuple afin que du levant au couchant du soleil, une offrande pure soit présentée à ton nom. C'est pourquoi nous te supplions, Seigneur, de consacrer toi-même les offrandes que nous apportons, sanctifie-les par ton Esprit pour qu'elles deviennent le corps et le sang de ton Fils, Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a dit de célébrer ce mystère. La nuit même où il fut livré, il prit le pain. En te rendant grâce, il dit la bénédiction, il rompit le pain et le donna à ses disciples en disant, « Prenez et mangez-en tous. Ceci est mon corps livré pour vous. » De même, après le repas, il prit la coupe. En te rendant grâce, il dit la bénédiction et donna la coupe à ses disciples en disant, « Prenez, buvez-en tous, car ceci est la coupe de mon sang, le sang de l'alliance nouvelle et éternelle, qui sera versé pour vous et pour la multitude en rémission des péchés. Vous ferez cela en mémoire de moi. » Il est grand le mystère de la foi. Nous annonçons ta mort, Seigneur Jésus. Nous proclamons ta résurrection. Nous attendons ta venue dans la gloire. En faisant mémoire de ton Fils, de sa passion qui nous sauve, de sa glorieuse résurrection et de son ascension dans le ciel, alors que nous attendons son dernier avènement, nous t'offrons, Seigneur, en action de grâce, ce sacrifice vivant et saint. Regarde, nous t'en prions, l'oblation de ton Église et daigne reconnaître ton Fils qui, selon ta volonté, s'est offert en sacrifice pour nous réconcilier avec toi. Quand nous serons nourris de son corps et de son sang et remplis de l'Esprit Saint, accorde-nous d'être un seul corps et un seul esprit dans le Christ.
Que l'Esprit Saint fasse de nous une éternelle offrande à ta gloire, pour que nous obtenions un jour l'héritage promis avec tes élus. En premier lieu, la bienheureuse Vierge Marie, Mère de Dieu, avec Saint Joseph, son époux, les bienheureux apôtres, les glorieux martyrs et tous les saints et les saintes qui ne cessent d'intercéder auprès de toi et nous assurent de ton secours.
May the sacrifice of our reconciliation, we pray, O Lord, advance the peace and salvation of all the world. Be pleased to confirm in faith and charity your pilgrim church on earth, with your servant Francis, our Pope, and Christian, our Archbishop, the order of bishops, all the clergy, and the entire people you have gained for your own. Listen graciously to the prayers of this family, whom you have summoned before you. In your compassion, O merciful Father, gather to yourself all your children scattered throughout the world.
Souviens-toi de Guy, qui a quitté ce monde et que tu appelles auprès de toi. Puisqu'il a été uni à la mort de ton Fils, accorde-lui de participer à sa résurrection, le jour où le Christ ressuscitera dans la chair ceux qui sont morts et transformera nos pauvres corps à l'image de son corps glorieux. Souviens-toi aussi de nos frères et sœurs défunts. Souviens-toi des personnes qui ont quitté ce monde et trouvent grâce devant toi. En ta bienveillance, reçois-les dans ton royaume où nous espérons être comblés de ta gloire, tous ensemble et pour l'éternité, quand tu essuieras toute larme de nos yeux. En te voyant, toi, notre Dieu, tel que tu es, nous te serons semblables éternellement. Et sans fin, nous chanterons ta louange. Par le Christ notre Seigneur, par qui tu donnes au monde toute grâce et tout bien. Par lui, avec lui et en lui, à toi, Dieu le Père Tout-Puissant, dans l'unité du Saint-Esprit, tout honneur et toute gloire pour les siècles des siècles.
Amen.
Prions celui qui ne cesse jamais de nous regarder comme ses enfants bien-aimés. Notre Père qui es aux cieux, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton règne vienne, que ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain de ce jour. Pardonne-nous nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons aussi à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous laisse pas entrer en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Délivre-nous de tout mal, Seigneur, et donne la paix à notre temps. Soutenus par ta miséricorde, nous serons libérés de tout péché, à l'abri de toute épreuve, nous qui attendons que se réalise cette bienheureuse espérance, l'avènement de Jésus-Christ, notre Sauveur. Car c'est à toi qu'appartiennent le règne, la puissance et la gloire pour les siècles des siècles. Seigneur Jésus-Christ, tu as dit à tes apôtres, « Je vous laisse la paix, je vous donne ma paix. » Ne regarde pas nos péchés, mais la foi de ton Église. Pour que ta volonté s'accomplisse, donne-lui toujours cette paix et conduis-la vers l'unité parfaite, toi qui vis et règnes pour les siècles des siècles.
Amen.
Que la paix du Seigneur soit toujours avec vous.
Et avec votre esprit.
Agneau de Dieu qui enlève le péché du monde, prends pitié de nous. Agneau de Dieu qui enlève le péché du monde, prends pitié de nous. Agneau de Dieu qui enlève le péché du monde, donne-nous la paix. Voici l'agneau de Dieu, voici celui qui enlève le péché du monde. Heureux les invités au repas des noces de l'agneau. Seigneur, je ne suis pas digne de te recevoir, mais dis seulement une parole et je serai guéri. Prions le Seigneur. Accorde, Seigneur, à ton serviteur Guy de passer dans ta demeure de lumière et de paix, car c'est pour lui que nous avons célébré le sacrement pascal par le Christ notre Seigneur. Veuillez vous asseoir. Notre frère Guy s'est endormi dans la paix du Christ. Confions-le à l'amour de Dieu notre Père, dans la foi, en la vie éternelle. Avec respect et affection, accompagnons-le de notre prière, dans l'espérance de nous retrouver un jour quand Dieu nous réunira dans la joie de son royaume. Recueillons-nous en pensant à tout ce que nous avons vécu avec Guy, à ce qu'il est pour nous, à ce qu'il est pour Dieu.
Let's think about everything that we've experienced with Guy, what he is to us and what he is to God.
Que l'encens monte devant Dieu avec notre prière, en signe de son baptême et de notre foi en la résurrection, que son corps soit béni. Seigneur notre Dieu, nous te recommandons notre frère Guy. Ton amour l'a accompagné tout au long de sa vie. Il a quitté ce monde qui passe. Conduis-le auprès de toi, où il n'y a plus ni deuil, ni larmes, ni douleur, mais la joie et la paix avec ton Fils et l'Esprit Saint pour les siècles des siècles. Le Seigneur soit avec vous.
Et avec votre esprit.
Que Dieu Tout-Puissant vous bénisse, le Père, le Fils et le Saint-Esprit. Allez dans la paix du Christ.
I'm certain I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway. More, much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall, and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way, oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way. Yes, it was my way.
What an extraordinary 2 hours we've shared together. The national funeral for Guy Lafleur coming to its conclusion, the Mary Queen of the World Cathedral, and here are members of his family getting back in the limousines at the conclusion of that national funeral. His sisters, his mother Pierrette, who was 90 years old, his 4 sisters, Suzanne, Gisèle, Lucie, Elise, his wife, you saw there just moments ago, also Lise, receiving the flag that was draped over her husband's coffin. I'll pause for you to experience what we are experiencing here. I don't think you saw that, but that was the CF-18 that flew overhead from CFB Bagotville, as I've been mentioning through the day. That was the tribute from the Combat Fight Unit, 3-wing battalion at CFB Bagotville, where he served as honorary colonel with distinction, that I wanted to pay tribute to him today. As the family members get in their limousines for the procession away from the church. We see some of the members of the honorary pallbearers, teammates, Guy Lapointe. We saw Yvan Lambert. We saw the brothers, his sons, Régent Houle, you see in the background, many who shared many glorious moments with Guy Lafleur. And there on that cushion as well, something that adorned his coffin throughout the ceremony with his medals and his honors there in tribute as well. And as we keep an eye on these live pictures, my name is Heather Hiscox. I'm live in Montreal and with you for what has been a special day of coverage here for the national funeral of Guy Lafleur, number 10, beloved by so many, the legend, the icon, the superstar for the Montreal Canadiens, 5 Stanley Cups, countless other records, 6 seasons, 50 goals and up, many, many trophies, the highest points scorer in the history of the club to this day. But more importantly, beloved by the thousands of fans who are still here. And over the course of the funeral, they've gathered in really enormous numbers outside Mary Cathedral, Mary Queen of the World Cathedral, because there are huge, big screens in front, as you perhaps can see from that aerial shot. It gives you a sense of how deep the crowd is. And they have gathered here to join in. Chants of Guy, Guy, Guy. Applause as the hearse leaves the church property. Let's listen in for one final Guy, Guy, Guy. Respectful applause. Everyone holding up cameras to capture this moment. Merci, Guy, you hear over and over. Bravo, Guy. And here is the family coming behind us. You see the family waving and showing their appreciation to the fans who have come to pay tribute to their brother and to their husband. And they are blowing kisses as well to the fans who have gathered on their feet, as they were through 14 glorious seasons with the Montreal Canadiens, and remembering those moments. There you see the live pictures, Premier François Legault and his wife Isabelle, as they lead the distinguished guests out of the cathedral. They will leave first. You see the Prime Minister, he and his wife Sophie, Justin Trudeau, Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. You also saw the Mayor of Montreal, Valérie Laplante, all of the dignitaries, thousands of mourners inside that church for the national funeral. And again, as you can see in the shot, waving farewell and thanks to the fans who have joined in the funeral from outside to pay tribute to someone who meant so much for them. The cameras that I mentioned, capturing this moment. He promised he'd return, and indeed he has. The legendary sports writer for the Gazette, Pat Hickey, back with me. Thank you, Pat.
Legendary just means old.
Oh, not at all. I think you're a legend, and I'm so happy to have shared this with you today. You were inside, and you were one of the invited guests. I'll share some of my moments, but I'd like to hear yours first.
Well, I think the thing that impressed me the most was the people outside and the fact that they accommodated them. And they put up the large screen so they could follow. I know the priest came out to distribute communion.
I've never seen that before.
Never seen
it was
that
extraordinary.
Before. No, it was extraordinary. You know, it was a recognition of the people that are out here, the family waving to them as they left. And I think, you know, these are the fans. These are the people that he captivated for 14 years. And it was just, you know, it was just wonderful to see that, you know, the people, the ordinary fans weren't included in it. I'm inside. You had a who's who of the political world in Canada and Quebec. You had a who's who of the hockey world, some, you know, local, you know, Quebec celebrities, business people and things like that. But these are the people that really
mattered.
These are the people I think, you know, Guy would want to know that they were sending him off in style.
As we listen to the eulogies, the 5 eulogies, from former teammates. There was the owner of the Canadiens, former captain Yvan Cornwallier. There was Carbeau, Guy Carbonneau. It was Patrick Roy at the end who talked about the 4 phases of knowing Guy Lafleur, reporting for his first training camp, then being a teammate, then being a rival. This phase wishing he had overtime with him, but he really captured a lot. I think people very impressed by Patrick Roy, who now is with the Quebec Empire, his former junior team, of course. What did you think?
I thought that was very moving. I think that, you know, what it encapsulated, brought everything together. I mean, different people talked about his hockey playing, talked about his contributions to the community afterwards, and Patrick put it all together in one, you know, in one thing. And, you know, I mean, he captured Guy, and, you know, as I say, in all of his phases. It's interesting that, you know, you had you know, people here who were rivals at various times. And,
yes.
The NHL commissioner was here. Joe Sakic, who was his teammate briefly in Quebec City.
He mentored him there, didn't he?
Yes, and he came back from Colorado. Even though his team was playing in the playoffs, and he came back here, and it was really interesting seeing all the people that you know, some of whom made an effort to get here, and you know, it's a measure of the respect that he garnered, and you know, everybody, you know, he was hard not to love because he was so humble, so
accessible and generous of spirit, as everyone was talking.
Yeah,
Patrick Roy did talk about that exact night in 1989 that we had talked about prior, where he scored 2 goals on him and the crowd was on its feet for the opposing player, which he'd never experienced. He talked about that. There were smiles and there was some laughter. Larry Robinson, for example, in his eulogy, another great teammate, talking about how he hopes up in heaven they don't have need for another big defenseman. That was a smile for sure. And as you mentioned, all of them touching in different ways, but they all kept coming back to the ordinary superstar and this connection that he had with Quebec hockey fans, with Montrealers, with people in general. And where did that come from? You know, you didn't have to prove he was a big dog. Where did that come from?
I think because he was accessible, because he was, you know, he was not in the mold. I mean, you know, today I don't know whether he could have survived, and you know, the way media is handled and things like that. But he was always accessible. He always spoke his mind. If he wasn't happy, you knew it. If he was happy, you knew it. And you know, I think these are all. You know, he was a common man. He was from the hinterland. Wasn't from a big city. Didn't have a lot of polish to him. But everybody knew that he was a genuine person. I think that's the best word. He was genuine. And
for me, one of the goosebump moments was Jeanette Renaud. I don't know, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I always have goosebump moments with Jeanette Renaud.
Incredible.
And you know, I can remember watching her sing as a 15-year-old at the Café de l'Est in the East End of Montreal. And over the years, it's interesting because she sang the national anthem when the Nordiques were playing the Canadiens in the playoffs.
Who did she sing for? She sang for both of them. Oh, did she?
You know, and Guy was playing at that time, and so you had all of these. You had, you know, he was her favorite. She was his favorite.
They were
singer.
close friends.
They were close friends.
She was her favorite singer, and he sang as well.
And
let me just the song L'Essentiel. And that was a song that played on the Sunday after his death as part of the tribute in the Bell Center, as did My Way, which was, of course, playing as he was carried back to the funeral procession. But L'Essentiel, the essential, it's to receive as much love as you would like to give, the essential. And it talks about, I mean, if you should spend some time on these incredible lyrics. It's about wanting to leave something that is so strong for when you're no longer here. Yeah. And that's exactly, of course, the case with Guy Lafleur.
That sums up what this day was about.
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah. She just received the highest cultural prize, the Legion of Honor from France. She is beloved there too, but she wanted to sing for her close friend and pay him one final respect.
Well, she's had a marvelous career, not only in France, but she also once had a TV show in the United States.
You know, Christmas album, hers is always the first one I play. I am a huge fan of hers as well. And so, as I say, that was a moment of high emotion, and wonderful that she was able to be here. So let me ask the essential, living on, beyond. Of course, there's the statue, which will last.
Right.
But what do you think is the place in the Pantheon for all time of Guy Lafleur?
No, I think he'll always be remembered as one of the greatest players. I hope that he's always remembered as one of the most exciting players. You know, that he didn't set any great scoring records and things like that, but he he was always exciting every time he was out there. His career with the Canadiens was cut short, but he came back on his own terms, and that's why my way is particularly appropriate, because he did do it his way. And a lot of people, I mean, he's one of only two players who came back to hockey after being elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Trivia buffs at home?
Gordie Howe.
Gordie Howe. So there he was to have done that. His number retired in 1985, into the Hall of Fame in 1988, and back he comes to play with the Rangers and then with the Quebec Nordique to end that career. Pat Hickey, I look forward to reading what you're writing about this and your thoughts. Thank you so much. Pat's book, If These Walls Could Talk, talks about the Canadiens, worth a read. And I hope to see you again soon. There won't be another funeral like this, though.
No, probably not.
This is the end, really. Maurice Richard, Jean Béliveau, today, extraordinary. Pat, thank you for sharing it with me.
My pleasure.
And as we bring you again more live images, former Serge Savard, former teammates of Guy Lafleur, some of the current players now as they leave the magnificent church, Mary Queen of the World. I want to thank you for joining us for a special coverage this morning. Guy Lafleur, born in 1950 down in Thurso, Quebec, and from there
he was not only a superstar, Hall of Fame
grew
hockey
to
player,
be
but
one of the
also a
greatest
warm,
hockey players of
humble,
all time, one of the
and
greatest
normal
ever
human
to
being
wear
with an outstanding
the
sense of
jersey
humor.
of the Montreal
Guy once
Canadiens.
said,
And as you hear there and see
"Play
there,
every game
Jeff
as if it is your
Molson
last one."
and Larry
No one
Robinson,
embodied that
the
philosophy
Sons, a
more than
full
Guy
church
did.
as they paid
And not
tribute
only did he play
to
each
number
game to
10,
its fullest,
to the flower,
he tried to
to le
live
démon
his life to
blonde,
the
as they
fullest
call him
off
here,
the
the
ice
blonde
as
demon,
well.
forever remembering that image of his hair flowing behind him as he raced down that right wing, usually to unleash another wrist shot, another slap shot, to score a goal just at the time the Canadiens needed it most. What a privilege to have shared this day with you today. We will leave you with some more images from the national funeral of Guy Lafleur. I'm Heather Hiscox in Montreal. Thank you very much.
In order to meet others on their terms.